everybody. Welcome back. Is there anybody on the conference line besides Helen yet? You there, Helen?
Yep, I'm here.
Just you, okay. Why don't you go ahead and hang up and call me directly then?
I'll do it.
Thanks. Save the nickel.
Oh, that's how you look for this.
Yeah.
Nickel here, nickel there.
Go away.
Did you have the bell turned on?
Mm-hmm. She's got the busy signal. Any event, we had in the first chapter talked about all the stuff we need to empty out to make room for this new stuff, because this new stuff doesn't go with any of those old concepts that we have. So they need to be emptied out. And then last week we started talking about the three levels of human consciousness, which are material and mental and mystical. And that chapter is really just so that we'll know what mystical consciousness isn't. Hi there.
I'm here.
Good. So we talked about mental and material consciousness because that's what we're not going to be talking about in the rest of this class. And now we'll finish up reading that chapter. We'll read about spiritual consciousness. And in this, in order to be consistent with the 7 topics that we talked about in each case, I put something under each one, but we're going to spend the whole next 6 chapters talking about this stuff really. But let's hear it now in context and then we'll move on. So, let's start. Bob, would you start first? Right there.
That's spiritual consciousness.
Uh-huh.
Spiritual consciousness. People at the level of material consciousness are not yet aware that matter is within mind, and people at the level of mental consciousness are not yet aware that mind is within consciousness. If mind is the bubble containing the material universe, consciousness is what mind is a bubble in, and what is aware of it.
Can you read that again?
Yeah. Well, how much for
Where are we in?
Well,
What session are we reading from?
We're reading Spiritual Consciousness in chapter 2.
Is that in session 1 or session?
Where we got to last week. What was the question again?
you just want the paragraph over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Spiritual consciousness. People at the level of material consciousness are not yet aware that matter is within mind. And people at the level of mental consciousness are not yet aware that mind is within consciousness. If mind is the bubble containing the material universe, consciousness is what mind is a bubble in and what is aware of it. Mind, that is.
Your dreams can give you a sense of this. When you dream at night, you're actually asleep in your bed, but you often appear to be in your own dream. The you in your dream believes the dream is real. You see, hear, taste, touch, and smell the things in your dream. The dream might be taking place in outer space. You could be in a spaceship traveling across the universe. The entire universe is within your dream. The dream may have an apparent duration of several hours.
When you wake up, let's say this is Tricia, let's say we had an EEG wired up to your brain so we could measure its activity. The EEG would have recorded heightened brain activity for only 1 or 2 seconds. Yet, to you in the dream, you appear to have been in the dream for several hours. This sense of time duration was created in your mind, presumably by your subconsciousness. And where is the vast space that was in your dream? The universe, the spaceship, and the others in the spaceship were also created in your mind by your subconscious. The time and space in which your dream took place never existed anywhere except in your mind. So we can talk about the dream, time and space as taking place in your subconscious. Your subconscious was outside of the dream, generated it and containing it, and when you woke up, you were aware that you had dreamed. We're now awake, and the time and space in the dream never existed except in your mind.
Okay. Go ahead.
Entering the level of spiritual consciousness means becoming aware of the consciousness that contains the mind that contains the phenomenal universe. We'll go through the 7 concepts we use to explore material and mental consciousness to give an indication of spiritual consciousness. The remaining chapters of this book will cover them in greater depth.
Matter. Matter in spiritual consciousness is the same as matter in mental consciousness. It's one form of mind within mind. The difference is that mind is now recognized as an instrument, used by the consciousness containing it to form its creation. Mind is no longer thought to be created. It forms the content of the consciousness governing it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So why doesn't consciousness just bypass mind? If consciousness is really the thing creating it.
Creation, we'll talk more later on, but the short answer is that creation requires time and space in which to manifest itself so that it can be experienced. And what we're defining mind as that aspect of consciousness which creates mind, space, and time. So it's the aspect of mind, of consciousness that contains mind, contains space, contains time, and manifests stuff. Just as within your dream, your subconsciousness creates time and space and manifests stuff within the bubble inside your brain, I guess. Okay.
So the mind is a conduit for consciousness.
Well, it's an aspect of consciousness that it's the aspect of consciousness that manifests itself. For it to be a conduit, it would have to be a conduit from something to something. In fact, it's just an aspect of consciousness within which it expresses itself for its own purposes.
Why does creation need time?
Creation doesn't need time, but experiencing creation needs time.
Okay, creation needs space and time, but yeah, the experiencing it does.
Experiencing, in order to experience creation, space and time are required.
So when they talk about in Zen Buddhism, no mind, does that mean just bypassing that?
They use mind a different way. They're talking about thinking functions. You gotta, in all these things, you got to be really careful what you're reading because what we're doing here is defining the way we're going to use the word mind.
Okay.
Because everybody uses mind to mean different things. Everybody uses meditation to mean different things. So we're really just like we do in script class. We define what we mean by emotion, what we mean by feelings, and this is really just we're defining mind as the aspect of consciousness which creates, in which manifestation occurs and is experienced. We'll use the word intellect. We'll use the word intellect to talk about the thinking function, and I'll use the word data bank to talk about the stuff that's stored up. The stuff that we think we have stored up somewhere. There's no way to prove that we do.
And all the stuff is not real anyway.
What happened to there being just one mind? Just one mind.
This will all get covered a great deal over the next 6 chapters. So let's don't do it out of sequence. We spend a lot of time writing it the way it needs to be presented. So let's just go through this and look at it briefly. Somebody do power.
Power. In spiritual consciousness, there is only one power, the power of the one consciousness to create and sustain itself. One of Joel's most important principles is one power, no power. Since the one consciousness did not create any other powers or anything else with power, there is only the one power, and since there is only one power, there is nothing to use it on. There is no more overcoming. There is nothing to overcome.
Religion. There really are no mystical religions, just mystical teachings, which means different ways of pointing at the mystical experience. The mystical experience is the religious experience. It's an individual, private, personal experience. No one can have it for you. There's no need for a church, no need for ritual, no need for structure, no need for anyone to intercede for you. Either you're having it or you're not having it. The goal of any true mystical teaching is to lead you to have the experience yourself, thus freeing you from the teacher and the teaching. There is nothing to organize, and those who have had the mystical experience typically have no desire to organize anything.
God is the one consciousness. Spirit, consciousness, and God are synonymous. In the mystical experience, it is realized that all there is consciousness, oneness. There is nothing else, no duality, just consciousness expressing itself as everything.
And that's what this whole third chapter is going to be about, that statement.
Prayer. In spiritual consciousness, prayer is replaced with a variety of spiritual practices, including prayer and meditation. Joel uses the word prayer to mean sitting silently, expecting, awaiting conscious contact with spiritual being. He's very clear that it does not involve words or thought. Others would call that meditation. Other spiritual practices include yoga, chanting, reading spiritual books, listening to spiritual tapes or CDs, sitting with higher consciousness as. The purpose of all these practices is attaining the mystical experience. Of course, we won't be there. You can't have the experience with others, but the experience can happen.
Supply. Spiritual supply is the opposite of human, material, or mental supply. It's outflow rather than income. The outflow of the spiritual oneness into manifestation in mind. In spiritual consciousness, supply refers to spiritual things, not material things. There are no material things, just images, mental concepts, spiritual things, manifested in mind. Jesus said it well when he told us to take no thought for material things, but rather to speak spiritual realization, kingdom of God. And all material things will appear. Thus supply is another word for the grace we experience as part of spiritual realization.
Healing. In spiritual consciousness, healing is essentially the realization that there is nothing to heal. It is all God, an expression of the one consciousness, and the nature of that one consciousness is perfection and harmony, what to heal. If we aren't experiencing harmony, it's because we haven't yet risen in consciousness to the level where it becomes our experience. Going to a spiritual practitioner for the healing of an apparent difficulty amounts to asking for help and being lifted to the level of consciousness where the problem disappears. The most important thing to get from this chapter is some clarity on what we are not pointing at. We are not pointing at mental or material consciousness. Spiritual consciousness has nothing to do with getting or acquiring. It has nothing to do with overcoming or applying power. It has nothing to do with any material or corporeal. It has nothing to do with any duality, especially any separate God that can be used. It has nothing to do with anything we can think, understand, or figure out. It transcends all of that. That's why we call it transcendental consciousness.
Okay. So that's just a quick glance at what we're talking about for the next 6 chapters of this thing, the 7 chapters, however it comes out. So let's just keep going. We're going to probably spend this weekend, next week on this next section called What Is. And this, now we're getting serious. That was all lightweight stuff up till now. That was just what we want to get rid of and what we're not going to talk about. So now we're going to actually start talking about what we want to talk about in this work. So we'll go as slowly as we want to, and I expect that this chapter will take us all of this week and next week and maybe longer, but I don't know. We'll just see. First page is just intro. Go ahead. Who's next? Please.
What is? A mystical truth has been revealed again and again throughout the last 4,000 years. It's not a secret. It hasn't been recognized by organized religions since they are formed by those who don't understand that it's available in the millennium of spiritual literature.
The Vedas in India record the realizations of many sages 3,500 years ago. These sages independently had mystical experiences and passed them on orally. 1,000 years later, the Upanishads, 18 much shorter expressions of the same truth, were appended to the Vedas. All of these works point to the identical truth.
This is Kelly. Shortly thereafter, Gautama the Buddha awakened while sitting under the Bodhi tree. His words were, "I am awake." His realization was the same truth pointed to in the Vedas and Upanishads. At around the same time, Moses had the revelation he expressed as, "I am that I am." Again, the same truth. Then some Old Testament prophets, and then Jesus pointed to the same experience.
The Ashtavakra Gita.
Ashtavakra.
Thank you. Is a wonderful poetic rendition of the same truth. More recently, we've had the ecstatic Islamic poets Rumi and Kabir, followed by a number of English mystical poets writing of their experiences of the same truth. In the last 100 years, there have been the great sages of India, Ramana Maharshi, Osho,
Sargadatta Maharaj.
Thank you. And Neem Karali Baba, to mention only a few.
Thank God.
Who all share the same experience, and of course they all consist with they are all consistent with the Westerners, Robert Adams and Joel Goldsmith. There are numerous books of the words of these masters translated into English where necessary, available to anyone who is curious.
The following, since we are going to the trouble of emptying out all our concepts of God, we will try to point to the truth all of these mystics experienced without using words that trigger conditioned concepts. The problem with loaded words like God, Father, Mother, and Son is that everyone has a different meaning for them.
This is Mary Ann.
So the point of, just one second, the point about all this is you can really go find all these books that are here and read them. I mean, there's 10 books by Rumi over there, and a great big book by Kabir, and there's a copy of the Ashtavakra Gita, and there's lots and lots of Joel, and Robert here, and Ramana Maharshi is here, and Karoli Baba was the guy that Ramdas went to spend time with in India, so you'll love him, and I know some of you have read the Sargadatta. You can read all this stuff. I mean, there's no authorities here. Go look for yourself and see what they're saying, is my point. Don't take this book as having any authority or any truth at all. Go look for yourself, and one of the purposes of all of this is these are a starting place of things to go look at. All these people were very clear. So,
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Is there anyone that clear right now in America that people buzz about?
There are always people that people buzz about.
Besides you.
They don't buzz, except me, they don't buzz about me.
Is Tony
Tichol is quite clear. I'm not a seeker. There's a guy named Jed McKenna who's just as clear as a bell. Who are the guys that?
I like E.T. Eckhart Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle. That's what I was trying. Eckhart Tolle is very clear. Hawkins is very clear. And Ganjaji is very clear, and Babaji is very clear, and Ramesh Balsekar is very clear, and Meg Johnson, an Infinite Way student out in Atlanta, is very clear. Keating. Yeah, he's not as articulate as formally presented as this, but the guy, and he's so clear that there aren't any words left. There are lots of people there are more now than there have ever been. Plus there's, undoubtedly 100 in India right now who are quietly doing their own thing. Very much. I'm going to get something else to drink.
If people shoot the answer, they'll be the true one. Yeah.
Okay, read on. I know. Read on.
Okay.
Here comes the fun.
Okay. All there is consciousness. The most succinct statement of the truth all these masters realized is all there is consciousness. This is the ultimate statement of oneness. Everything is one, and that one is consciousness. Notice that it doesn't say someone or something is conscious of anything, just consciousness. The word consciousness is probably not loaded, since we don't really know what consciousness is. We know that it is, that we are conscious, but we have nothing we can say about consciousness as a thing, a concept. The consciousness that is meant is exactly the consciousness that we all individually experience.
Okay. What do you mean by that? The consciousness that is meant is exactly the consciousness that we individually experience. Are we truly conscious right now?
Are you?
Well, it depends. There's different interpretations of that. Wouldn't you? Isn't that what we're trying to get? Is conscious? Conscious.
No, there is one consciousness, and we are all conscious right now.
But we're all perceiving something totally different.
Yeah, I'm not talking about what we're conscious of. I'm talking about the consciousness, the awareness itself. If you can, I don't know if it's going to stay there or not, we're all aware. There is awareness. Individually, there's awareness associated with each of us. And we think we're aware of different things. And we have what we refer to as individual consciousnesses, but if you can think of awareness without being aware of anything, you can think of awareness without there being an object of the awareness, okay? So there's just awareness, okay? That awareness is the awareness that we share. That is the function that has been subsequently filled up with all our different lists of things that we're aware of and our different lists of who we think it is that's aware. But the awareness, the consciousness that's functioning in me is exactly the same consciousness that's functioning in you, that's functioning in everybody.
Could you, I don't know if this is right, could you say that we are all the consciousness, we are all of the consciousness, but when we outpicture the content of our consciousness is what separates us from the consciousness.
What makes us, what befuddles us into thinking we're separate from the consciousness.
I guess what I was trying to get, you're using conscious with a small c and a big C. So the small c is individual, and the big C is the...
I think it kind of needs a repair.
Consciousness is always capitalized.
Yeah, when I say big C, I'm talking about the universal. Okay. That's like talking about Godhead versus the manifestation or something like that, you know. I am more or less using a capital C to try to talk about when I'm talking about the absolute. Robert would call it choiceless, effortless, pure awareness, or pure unadulterated consciousness, or ultimate consciousness. It's the consciousness which is not conscious of anything, and there's no one being conscious. It's not that someone is conscious of something. It's just all there is consciousness. And, obviously, we can't talk about these things. That's why it's called a mystical experience. But that's what we're pointing at.
Consciousness means what the word God is pointing to. Joel, recognizing that the word God was loaded, sometimes used the infinite invisible. Another used word that has bad associations, has few bad associations, is spirit. We don't really have any idea what spirit is, but we generally agree it's not body or mind. The least loaded expression I know for all there is what is. What is? What is spirit, consciousness, God, and infinite invisible are used synonymously in this book. Many words that refer to the one ineffable truth we're going to talk about.
So I'm just calling it what is because I don't think any of you think you know what is means. I sure don't. But we do know that what is what is, right?
Now we begin to explain why all concepts about God are false. Remember, every concept we have is within our own consciousness. If God is all of consciousness, then our concepts are within God. God includes all concepts. A concept of God might be a limited description pointing at some aspect of what is, but it certainly is not a complete concept of what is.
So we have a starting place. But there is consciousness. The consciousness we are using to read this book.
Okay. Cool. Go ahead.
What is expressed and sustained. We can also probably agree that there appears to be a creation which we are conscious of. If all there is consciousness, then creation must be a part of consciousness, expressed as man in the universe. Since consciousness is spirit, incorporeal man, and the universe are spirit, incorporeal, and perhaps we can also agree that there appears to be some sort of sustaining activity.
Get that? If the truth that they all say, that all the mystics agree that all there is consciousness, then everything has to be conscious. It has to be made out of consciousness. The only substance there is consciousness, okay? And consciousness is spirit and incorporeal. It's not a body, in other words. There's no body in consciousness, it's spirit. So everything is spirit, okay? And everything includes man in the universe. So man in the universe is spirit. We're back to spiritual being. Back to the spiritual being. And we'll get on and wait till the next chapter. We'll talk about human experience. But you can see why we must be spiritual beings, because there can't be anything else.
For everything.
For everything.
Everything's a spiritual being.
Everything is a spiritual being. Yes, must be. Go ahead.
Experiencing what is requires time and space. There needs to be an expanse to the experience and a duration for the experience to take place in. We are using the word mind to refer to the aspect of consciousness in which creation is expressed. The aspect that includes time and space. The material level of consciousness believes creation is external, real matter in space and time. The mental level has become aware that our experience of space, time, and creation is taking place in incorporeal mind. All there is consciousness, means that consciousness must be the creative principle. Consciousness is the only possible creator. But since consciousness is eternal and outside of time, we have a problem with the idea of creation. Creation seems to imply a particular time when creation occurred. And the same problem applies to sustaining. Sustaining means over time. What is simply is eternal, unchanging being. What we see as creation is just a view of what is, in the time and space continuum of our minds. Our experience of creation unfolding is because we are experiencing it in time. We are witnessing the unfolding of what is over time.
That's a lot of stuff. Want to take that apart?
It's huge, yeah.
Yeah.
Leelaa, I have a question. Okay, so when there were perceived healings, okay, like what some of the masters, okay, let's use Jesus for example. Okay, so where was he operating? He was operating out of consciousness with a capital C, right? But okay, but he was knowing the truth, but it was still at a human.
Well, not quite. Spiritual practitioner at the level of mental consciousness would know the truth.
Okay.
And that would be the power. Jesus saw the truth. Just saw it. Just knew the truth. In the sense of was aware of it. Okay, do you get the sense of the different times between knowing the truth, which sounds like a recitation of truth statements,
yes,
to just seeing the truth?
Yeah.
Jesus didn't see the disharmony. When the crippled man was laying there on the road, as far as everybody else was concerned, and Jesus said, pick up your robe and walk. He didn't see a cripple. He saw a healthy expression of God manifested and knew that it could walk.
But for someone not at that level of consciousness, then progression of time, and that even though time doesn't exist, but if you're living in human experience and you're moving in this direction, we're on the spiritual path, then the only other alternative is to use a form of, of metaphysics almost.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
A mental mind treatment until you overcome the duality.
And we'll get to that when we talk about healing, but very definitely necessary. First step is to know the letter of truth so intimately that you don't have to think about it anymore. You have to know the letter of truth, and that's what this book is about. You know the letter of truth and work with it and get it deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until you realize it. And see, then you don't need to know the truth as the cripple, or the apparent cripple, because you see the truth, which is that this is an expression of an incorporeal, eternal, harmonious expression of God.
But there's another story where the lady says, if I just touch his robe, but the important part in the Bible, it says she looks within herself, and if only she touches his robe, and then she's healed. She's bleeding.
Healing, the process of healing, the process of calling, and then healing is a much later topic, but let's do it since it's here. The process of spiritual healing is lifting a person above the problem. Lifting a person to the point where they too see that there is no problem. Okay? So she went within herself, which means she went into her consciousness, and she also recognized his consciousness and touched it and got lifted above the appearance of the problem.
But, so, I just have to go back to this example because it's thinking, Michael. So the guy, the cripple, all of a sudden isn't crippled anymore because his consciousness was lifted, but his consciousness wouldn't be equal to that of Jesus's, or does it have to be lifted to have that healing? That's what I'm saying.
It was lifted to that point. It was lifted.
And then, if he didn't stay at that place?
Yeah, there's lots of comments about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what he looked like 6 months from now.
Okay.
I mean, the lepers may have had leprosy again. I mean, Lazarus might have only lived another week. I mean, who knows about that? Do you remember that Jesus, when he used to say, he used to heal people and say, go and sin no more? And what he means is don't repeat that level of consciousness anymore. Stay out of that level of consciousness, lest the worst thing come unto you. In other words, if you're going to keep dwelling in that consciousness, you're going to keep manifesting this stuff.
So when they're lifted to that consciousness, is it possible to stay there? I mean, are they at that, or You know, almost,
Typically not.
okay, I was going to say, because it almost seems like some of these healing things are almost like, I hate to say this, like slideshow tricks to show people that there is a higher level of consciousness. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Like if I do this, then maybe you'll believe a little bit more. I really don't need to do anything.
And maybe you'll come along to do it for yourself. And you can do it for yourself. You're at a different level of consciousness, aren't you?
Right.
And if you get lifted, you never slide back down quite as far as you were because you had the experience of seeing the truth, so now your belief in the falsity is shaken.
Okay.
I mean, if you are dying of cancer and suddenly you go into the CAT scan the next day and there's not a trace of it, you know, you say, I mean, you're certainly not enlightened as a result of that, but you're saying, whoa, there's something here I don't understand, you know, and that was cool.
So look at Joel. Joel's healed. I mean, Joel got healed from a practitioner.
Right.
And look what he did after that.
Right.
Yeah, he got lifted very high, and he was already, as a result of 19 years of very intensive work of his own personal work, and so he did not get healed by that practitioner. He went to a practitioner to get a cold healed, and what he got instead was an enlightenment experience. Because everything else changed, and the next day he was healing. Not healed, healing.
Yeah.
He had no idea why or how, but he was really lifted. Yeah. Yeah, the other thing is, I'll be right with you. The other thing is, well, two more things. One is sitting in a higher consciousness lifts you. And we all experience that. You hang out with higher people and you get lifted. And you can feel it, you know. And what was really troubling you, you know, I mean, the picture doesn't change, but what was really troubling you doesn't seem to bother you anymore, you know. It's just not a big deal anymore, you know. I mean, you got lifted above the, we'll use the word later, you got lifted out of the hypnosis. Okay? And,
cool.
Something else went through, but it'll come back to this book. What do you have, Andrew?
I had a couple of questions. One was, how does this relate to the Catholic concept of sainthood? They had to perform miracles to become saints, and this is exactly what you're talking about in a way. It's just, a miracle would be raising your level of consciousness. So for all my contempt for the Catholic religion, they actually have like a kernel of truth in there.
Oh, there's some very real saints in the Catholic religion, in spite of their upbringing. in spite of their education, and in spite of their training, and in spite of everything else, some of them survived that and actually had a mystical experience, and some of the saints are real.
I can see a lot of these seeds of truth, as it may have gone awry in the religious spectrum of seeing this, but interpreting this and going this way and going that way and going that way, and there's a seed of truth somewhere there. But even after reading some of Joel and hearing Jesus' words in a totally different way, yet still seeing how religion pumps it in a completely different way.
That was the whole thing about the planet of the moon. You know, if you don't have the realization, then you're dealing with words, and words aren't right, and so they can be misinterpreted in 10,000 ways. That's why there's so many different sects.
One more question for me. Just, wasn't it Jesus who said, just referred to himself as the great I am? Isn't that the same thing as the what is?
Mm-hmm. And Moses' experience is, I am that I am. That I am. This I am is that I am. You know, I am that consciousness. You could have said the consciousness. Yeah. It's all the same realization.
And that's their realization
of oneness, of the fact that all there is consciousness, and the realization is that this consciousness is the consciousness, not my consciousness.
I hate to ask one more question about this crippled guy. You know, I'm Mary Magdalene on the corner before I've been enlightened, and I see this happen. Do I see the crippled walk? Because my level of consciousness is still down here, or do I see whatever it is my perception of that moment is?
You see the crippled walk.
Even though my consciousness hasn't been raised that far.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Because the image that's being projected in the mind that we all see of him is his image.
Okay. Okay.
You're not generating him, so you get to see what's being generated over there. And the guy comes to Jesus and says, hey, I got a bad picture of me. And Jesus said, well, take a better look. And the guy says, oh, yeah. And gets up and walks. And you say, wow, that was strange. And then another rabbi comes walking down the street and sees another cripple and says, what did hinder you? Pick up your robe and walk. And the guy just lays there. And says, because that rabbi didn't have Jesus' consciousness. You know, the next rabbi couldn't do it.
The other fun healing is the one through the centurion, where he comes and says, you know, I got the sick kid. And Jesus says, oh, I'll come. And the centurion says, oh, no, you don't have to do that. You just speak the word and you'll be healed.
And Joel did that all the time, healing people 10,000 miles away before he even got their letter. This stuff's real.
So he was, okay, so, but it's the use of the law, right? That it's that, what the principle that the consciousness that, okay, whatever it is he's doing, I guess the word I want to say is the action that he takes is the use of the law, spiritual law. What is, it's never changing, it's just those aspects that are real. It's kind of hard to talk about it without saying God now. You know,
we said we're going to use them interchangeably. I just don't want to say God because I don't know what you mean by God, but you know what you mean by God. So if that's comfortable, use it. Yeah, it's not an awful word. It's not prescribed. No, Jesus didn't use anything.
Jesus
didn't do anything.
There was exactly.
He
There was nothing to be done.
There
was nothing to be done. Jesus said, I am the truth.
We didn't see it.
The only reason we're using Jesus is because he's the most available, really clear example, because you guys don't have it. If you guys study Joel and realize that he healed 135 people a day, typically, for the 20 years that he was very much in practice, and he had an 80 to 90% success rate. And he was healing cancer and tuberculosis and mongoloid children and babies born without limbs and babies that were breech, and helped a woman who had infertility problems because she didn't have fallopian tubes, and she had 3 babies, no fallopian tubes, but 3 babies. You know, I mean, we have had very recent, but people are more familiar with Jesus, so that's why we keep going there. But, incredible healings going on, and it's just knowing the truth. Joel didn't do it. Joel typically did nothing. And then he just opened the next letter, because he was always in the consciousness. Now, if he got a call back and there was a problem, then he would take it into meditation. Sometimes he would go into meditation and but what he was doing was lifting himself back up to the state of consciousness, and all these people were just bouncing off his consciousness. You know, the waves of sickness and disease and disharmony and all that, Joel would say, would break against the law of his consciousness. You know, he did nothing. Didn't have to use anything. But he's very clear that before you can do nothing, you have to do all the metaphysical. You have to learn all the metaphysical truths and do the one power, no power, and impersonalization and nothingization and knowing specific truths. And there's years and years of work to raise yourself to that consciousness, unless you happen to get struck enlightened and choose to heal. Robert got struck enlightened and didn't give a shit.
Yeah. So what would be the difference, like when we're using examples of Jesus used lepers and beggars and prostitutes, I mean, we like the lowest of the low. And then we listen to Joel's healing things, and you say some were instantaneous, some took up to a year. Why would that take time if you knew the truth?
Because it's the extent to which the client, so to speak, the patient, is clinging to their old beliefs.
So in the Bible, when they talk about these really low of the low, is there a reason for that? Were they that much more ready to give up their beliefs than somebody?
Why did the ones? So Jesus is hanging on the cross, and he's got a thief on each side of him, and one of them says, "Oh, it's God, save me." And Jesus says, "Sure." And the other one says, "What's going on here?" Because, Mary Magdalene was high enough to reach out to him. Et cetera, et cetera. They, if you want to cling to your script, you're not going to get healed.
Okay.
Please.
In one of the talks I listened to in answer to that, he talks about
that a lot of people don't, they're more comfortable staying, not being healed. They don't maybe consciously realize that, but they're so attached to their illness or their problem that they really don't want to let it go, and they're not open to receiving it for whatever reason.
He also talks about a guy, for instance, who came to him for a healing. He says, but don't heal me of smoking. I want to keep on smoking. And Joel says, well, I don't know if I can direct God to work only on the cancer and not, and I don't have anything to say about it. And so, if you're willing to be lifted, you're willing to be lifted. If you don't get to specify what your healing looks like or anything. Let's move on. Okay. This is not the healing class. I know it's fun to talk about that, but let's move on.
The true nature of everything is the nature of what is, because there is nothing else. What is did not really create the universe. What is the universe. It is the very substance of the universe. Man and the universe are a continuous unfolding of what is, expressing or revealing itself throughout time and space. When we see creation as simply what is, with its various eternal characteristics, we are beginning to understand oneness.
Lao Tzu said, he who knows says not, he who says knows not. Now we're beginning to see what he meant. What is indescribable, but we can talk about it, we can point at it like the finger pointing at the moon. The problem is that we are used to functioning as human beings, physical bodies with 5 material senses and a finite mind. These bodies are part of the creation within mind, and these 5 senses can't perceive anything which is not in mind. Also, a limited, finite brain thinking sequentially in time cannot comprehend infinity. This, of course, is the reason we implored you in the beginning, not to get your intellect involved. The intellect is the wrong tool. This is something that has to be experienced by the spiritual being that is having the human experience. Next, we'll try to expand our understanding by pointing at some aspects of the nature of what is.
What is eternal harmony. One aspect or function of consciousness is the ability to express itself in time and space. The consciousness containing its expression in mind as part of itself is outside of mind, and mind contains time. So what is outside of time. This is the true meaning of eternal. Eternal doesn't mean an infinitely long stretch of time that had no starting point and will have no ending point. Eternal means transcending time. Time is one of the constructions of mind. What is, including mind, is eternal.
Now is another word for eternal. Now is always here, eternally here. Now is when what is. Now is not a part of time. We have been conditioned to think of the future approaching us, becoming now, and then receding into the past. Looking at it that way now seems to be part of time. But another way of seeing it is that right now is now, and it's still now, and it's still now, it's still now, eternally now. There's no such thing as the future. Just thoughts in mind now about something that hasn't happened. And there's no such thing as the past, just thoughts in mind now, labeled memories. Get that?
When we're using mind here, we're using mind as described as mind and consciousness. Mm-hmm. And so then thoughts have already been described.
Thoughts are just another aspect of mind, just like material is. You may remember we talked about water and steam and ice being different forms of H2O, and also matter and thoughts are different expressions of mind. Yeah.
Where it says, I guess it's hard about the future because it hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. But when it says there's no such thing as the past, just thoughts in mind now labeled memories.
Uh-huh.
I mean, those really are. I mean, it did happen. It did happen, right?
No.
Good answer.
No. Think about what you can prove to yourself. You're having a thought right now which you label a memory about something. Okay? Right now, there is a thought that you label a memory. Okay? Now you may have another thought that you label a memory about what happened 1 minute before that memory. And another thought right now, which you label a memory, which happened 1 minute before that one. But if you're not thinking, there's no past, there's no future. You have to think to create either the future or the past. And when you're creating the future or the past, you're doing it now. Anybody getting that?
I have a question about that. Because it goes back to the initial question. The thought that you just described is not the thought of mine. It's the thought of past and future.
Those are thoughts within mind. They're my thoughts within mind. I think.
I'm just trying to get the dialect.
But, you know, they're thoughts. There are thoughts in mind. Now, they happen to be thoughts that I entertain or thoughts that you entertain. But I entertain a thought about what I'm going to do tomorrow. Right now, I'm thinking that I'm going to do something tomorrow. And another thought I can entertain is what it was like when I was 10. Okay?
So that coincides with the air, water, gas of mind.
Yeah, that's just a thought in your mind. It's one of the functions of mind is to think, and I have right now in my mind a thought about what it was like when I was 10.
So you can change those thoughts? They don't have to be, that could be, you could change the past, you could change the thoughts you had.
How can I change the past if it doesn't exist? I can forget it, in which case there's no symptom of it ever having existed. There's nothing to change. It's just a thought I'm having now.
And it only exists when you think of it now. However many times you bring it back up now.
Now I can't have a different thought about what I was like when I was 10.
I'm referring to like how our perceptions change.
Sure.
Say it again. What can't you?
Well, I suppose I could, but I mean the fact is that when I have thoughts that I label being 10, I remember the blonde kid back in East Tennessee in the hills, and I can't remember a brunette 15-year-old in Bel Air when I think about myself as a kid.
But isn't that some psychological work is about going back and removing some of the blocks, where then your whole perception changes of your childhood?
Well, what happened there? But but the fact is that the thoughts that I have that I recall that I label memory when I was 10 is the blonde kid in Tennessee, and I can't have a thought of a brunette girl in Bel Air when I think of myself as 10. This storyline is about a 10-year-old blonde kid in Tennessee. That's how this plays, and we'll get to that when we talk about Leelaa.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, this is huge, and I'm going to, but
No,
I just want to throw something out there, because I really want you to just break whatever. So what about your mother's thought about when you were 10 and all the pictures she has in her picture album?
What about?
They're there. All the pictures of you at 10 in your picture album, your mother's thoughts of you at 10 in your picture album, none of it's all real.
It's all now.
This is really confusing me. So if you had a picture album sitting in front of your photographs of you at 10.
It's your identification with the you. That's all in mind.
False concept.
So we all saw it, and we all agreed upon it. Mm-hmm. We're all... Okay, I'm like, that's all right. I'll get over it.
It's dynamite now.
It's an image in mind.
Who's the you speak of?
Okay. All right. Go ahead. All right.
How are you saying nobody has a past?
There's nobody.
I'm saying we all have thoughts we label past.
But it only exists now.
It all exists now.
If we're spiritual beings, then there's no timeline.
Even if we're not, there's still no timeline.
Sure there is, when you look at the horizontal.
So as the science fiction freak in the room, does that mean time travel is not possible? I'm trying to, if there is no time, because at first I thought if time is going on up here, then we up here can transcend time, but from what I'm hearing now, I'm thinking we can't, because it's all now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the point of this is to try to, let's rather than spending the rest of the year here on time, we're talking about the absolute consciousness, the one consciousness. We're talking about what is. And we're saying that what is eternal. Okay? Because it's outside of mind. It transcends mind, and I can't explain that to you because we're using mind to talk. So we gave the analogies of the fact that we create time and space in our dreams. And in the same sense, this time and space may be a creation in mind by supreme consciousness. Okay? Now, we haven't yet got to what is, to what appears to be. We're talking about what is right now. And what is spirit and incorporeal and eternal and always now. And that's not what any of us are experiencing here right now. Okay? We're all experiencing what appears to be. We're not experiencing what is. Okay? The spiritual beings that we are experience what is. Right.
And what is?
Now, I want to point out in this the meaning of eternal as not a long stream of time, but eternal as being outside of time. And I'm giving you, since you can't think of something that is outside of time, I'm saying another way you can look at it is to realize that our flowing sense of time from future to past is a mental construct. Because even though we think of the future as coming closer and closer to us and suddenly being now and then disappearing into the past, my experience is that it's always right now. I'm always right here, right now, regardless of whether I'm thinking about the future or thinking about the past or thinking about now, which means not thinking at all. My experience eternally is that it's now, okay? And there's no sense of time moving in that if I'm focused there. If I'm driving my car, I can see the car going down, I can visualize the car going down the freeway, or I can visualize the freeway coming at me, okay? I can visualize myself as sitting still and the freeway and the whole world is coming at me and going past, or I can visualize that I'm in my car tearing through the world, okay? The in my car tearing through the world is the future coming into now, going into the past. The in my car, the world streaming past me is me sitting here in the now, and the future is now, and now is still now, and now is still now. Okay, so I'm just trying to give us a new sense of eternal, because we get locked into the idea that eternal means a long time. And eternal means no time. That's the only point of this.
Okay, thanks.
Diane? Diane can only get our agreement about your scrapbook existing now. Mm-hmm. We can only really have that experience now.
Mm-hmm. But that's in what appears to be in any case.
That's all I needed. That made it really clear. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
this is our human experience.
We'll get to the Leelaa.
Okay.
A few weeks. Let's finish this. What is the eternal harmony? Where are we on this one?
The first principle of Jung's teaching is. God is. He commented that God is ising. God is not wasing and never was wasing. And God is not willing and never will be willing.
So get that. Give up this idea, God willing, I'll do something. God willing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Ron was at the meetings
I like
in
it.
AA. So they must have the meetings in AA. God willing.
I like is it. To me, that says there's only one presence now. It makes all ideas such as what is, doing something in the future that it's not doing now, that it is not doing now. I gotta read that one again. It makes all ideas such as what is, doing something in the future that it is not doing now, or ceasing something in the future that it is doing now, nonsense. Because those are timely considerations, and what is not in time.
Get that?
Another characteristic of what is harmony. We think of harmony as everyone or everything getting on together. But when we think of everything as aspects of what is coexisting eternally outside of time, we get a whole new glimpse of what harmony really means.
And it's 8:31, so let's spend time talking about this as much as we want to now, and we'll start reading there next week. And there won't be a new chapter on the website this week, because we'll take all of next week to read this at least. So we can play any games for as long as you want, or until I fall asleep.
How do we get the second chapter if I didn't print it off last week?
Yeah, I don't know. Not there anymore.
Okay.
No, they change. It's just a chapter out of the book I'm working on, and it's been rewritten already.
Yeah, he's editing. That's right. He can edit. But can you edit something?
It was Matt.
Can I make a suggestion on it? Edited it. So, there's one line where it says on the, oh man, we have to go like this for 10 hours.
Bring it to me after the class. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to get the editing comments. Now, the whole purpose of the stuff on the website is, the only reason that there's any text on the website is if you want to bring it with you to read along while we're here. That's its only purpose, so I just put it up for that. I'm not making it. That's to correct and keep previous versions and stuff like that. There'll be a book out at the end of this. When this is all done, we'll print the whole book, and it'll be updated as a result of all the input we've had. So this week's audio file will be up until next Tuesday, and next week's text file usually will come up on the Saturday before the class, although this one will just stay the way it is. Yeah.
My human mind is kind of worked around, the 12 steps in AA, and God could and would if you were sought.
Mm-hmm.
That's still like a God doing something for you. And how does that fit in with this at all?
Well, there are a lot of 1935 male Christian concepts in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the guys that wrote the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous were only 4 years sober, in spite of the fact that it's very strongly a spiritual book. And in fact, we can look at that as saying, it says God could and would if he were sought, but if you look at seeking as the process of increasing your realization, and your realization is an increase in the recognition that God is ising, then it appears over time as if God is doing it as a result of being sought. By seeking God, you expand your awareness, and as you expand your awareness, there's more grace in your life. You're aware of more of the grace that's eternally in your life, and so it appears that it's growing, but in fact what's growing is your understanding of what's always been there.
Can I say one thing about that is it's just a concept. God couldn't would if he was sought. It's just a concept.
Well, I just threw that out as a small example.
But one thing with Big Book and Alcoholics Anonymous is just get people to a higher level of consciousness where they don't drink. But then, there's a lot more work to be done to do this work. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, AA is not the highest truth in every area, but it's a very sound spiritual program that will allow you to share our consciousness that you don't need to drink today. And that's sharing that consciousness is enough to not need to drink today. So.
And I just submit that Wilson had mystical experience.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, definitely.
He certainly healed a lot of people.
Say that again?
Yeah, he healed. I mean, if you catch my previous comment about the saints, he would be a saint, you know, if it were.
I don't think so.
No, I mean, as far as healing, the healing that has gone on, millions of people.
But he didn't heal millions.
There's no healing.
But he wrote the book, so he really
104 people.
No, he did. Yeah.
There's a group consciousness.
When I'm talking about Joel healing, I'm not talking about him writing books that people over the last 50 years have understood and got lifted. I'm talking about the fact that they write Joel and the cancer disappears. And when people came up to Bill, they did not get sober. Right. Some of them, a few of them. One of them finally was desperate enough that he was willing to follow the steps that Bill suggested. So it's an entirely different sense of healing.
But we have human consciousness and God consciousness. Then are we going to be discussing a lot of I mean, there's not a gray area, right, in what we're talking about here.
So there certainly is. I mean, no, God consciousness is God consciousness, and human consciousness is human consciousness, and it's fairly easy to determine which is which. But there certainly are a lot of gray experiences because most of us are in that area Joel refers to as living between two worlds, in which we've got our head in the clouds and our feet in the mud, or vice versa. And you know, I mean, we may well know the truth about one specific thing and not know any truth at all in a lot of other areas. So I mean, we're all having, you know, none of us are completely human or completely mental or completely mystical here. None of us have fully achieved. And none of us would be here if we hadn't started. So we're all in what you could see as a gray area, although I tend to think that it's sort of polka dotted.
Mystics.
And some of us have more polka dots than others, and some of us have bigger polka dots than others, but we all got polka dots. It's the sea of humanity.
I don't know if it'll be in the book, but I really liked when you had said in a previous class that consciousness creates, mind forms, and the intellect interprets. Mm-hmm. And mind forms whatever it's given, doesn't care whether it's given truth or whether it's given garbage, it'll just form what it's given.
Yep. Mind is like a mirror, accurately reflecting exactly what it's given.
I came in today, and I sat down and I talked to Michael, and I went over and I spoke to you, and then Jessie, and she went over there, and it was amazing, because then I saw Christy, and Christy had been there the whole time. And I said to her, have you been there the whole time? And she said, yes. Oh my goodness, I mean, it was just surreal, because I really did not see
Christy's not really there.
No, I know. I mean, having all of this talk is just amazing.
She's often not really there. She's pretty quiet. Okay, we'll keep on. This next week we'll just dive right back in. Feel free to call. Let's get quiet for a minute. might want to next Monday go back and reread the stuff in this chapter up to the point where we're at now before you come here, or go back and listen to it on the audio file if you didn't print it out, just so that you're current, because it is cumulative stuff. So you might want to just go back over the first couple of pages of this chapter. Okay, thanks for coming. That's all.
Thank you.